Na Bogogo Achieng, Member for Angwe.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to make my contribution on this very important motion I rise to support. And I want to thank Dr. Tum for bringing this particular motion to the House. In the wake of the very many deaths of senior members of society and the unrecorded cases of deaths that arise from cancer, it is important that there is, we put in some serious debate around issues cancer. Those who have spoken ahead of me have indicated that cancer of the cervix is a sexually transmitted disease, and this must come out very clearly, that cancer of the cervix, anal cancer, cancer of the throat, and even cancer of the penis are sexually transmitted diseases. And most of it, one of the predisposing factors is exposure to human papillomavirus. So as we discuss this matter, Honorable Speaker, lifestyle change is more important than even vaccination. Because most people who transmit this are not young boys. Most people who transmit and are mainly sexually active are people who have are a bit economically endowed, and they think that they should sleep around anywhere, anytime with anybody. These are the people who are causing trouble in this nation. The people who go sleeping around with young girls. If you see yourself as a man having genital warts, that's a clear indication of you having human papillomavirus. And people should be advised, especially in such cases, for them to reduce their sexual activity. So, men are carriers, women are sufferers. You may think that you have tested yourself for HIV, AIDS, and you're safe, but you are a carrier of HPV virus, and you're going to kill your wife. It is important that we are serious about matters sex. It is important that we seriously look our sexual behavior, even as leaders in this country. Because there are people who think that when they have 1 or 2 shillings, they want to go sleeping around with anything woman. And unless we address our sexual activity as Kenyans, then the cancer is going to hang around with us for a very long time. I want to say this, and I want it to go on record, that if we do not bring in sexual education at its earliest in our education system, and we discuss this matter with our boys and girls, then certain cancers are going to stay with us for quite a bit, and we are yet to die as Kenyans. So it is important, other than the vaccination that we give against HPV virus, it is seriously very important that we tell our boys and girls, without any matter of doubt, that you go doing or having early sex, one of the things that you're going to predispose yourself to is certain aspects of cancer. So we are not going to dwell so much on vaccination. Vaccination is an important aspect of prevention. But why vaccinate and we go spreading cancer around through sex? Members, we know ourselves in this house. We know our leaders who are outside. There are even business people who have a lot of money. My friend, go sleeping around with everybody everywhere, but even you are predisposed to cancer of the penis. It is not only about cervical cancer. You are going to predispose yourself to cancer of the anus. HPV virus has also been found to be a problem with the cancer of the breast. So it is not only about cancer of the cervix that we are talking about here, Honorable Speaker. It is a serious matter that we need to address as a leadership of this country and as people who are serious about reducing our mortality rate in Kenya. Having said that, Honorable Speaker, it is also very, very important that we relook at our healthcare system. It is only primary healthcare that is devolved. And the national government should take up its role of addressing the issue of healthcare seriously. It is only the hospitals that were being run by the councils that were left for counties. And this should come up very well as it is in Schedule 4. So I want to rise to support this matter, Honorable Speaker, but at the same time, I want to give a very strong warning for those of us who think that they can just go sleeping around. You will sleep around, my friend. You are going to have sex everywhere, my friend, and you are the one who is going to kill very many Kenyans. And we should be able to identify these kind of people, put them down, and give them advice. There are people who are everywhere having sex as if sex was a toy for playing around. It is high time as Kenyans we got sexually responsible. It is high time as Kenyans we taught our children and we respected our children. That time that you are able, because as it were right now, there is a very simple kit for testing for HIV. You take a bit of blood, you put it on that kit, then you find yourself your HIV negative. My friend, any other sexually transmitted disease, any other sexually transmitted infection will predispose you to cancer. And the medics here can give us advice. The issue with Kenya is not about the personnel that can handle cancer. We have very, very many oncologists in this country. But the county governments are not able to engage our oncologists. We have highly trained oncologists who can handle cancer. We have highly trained oncologists who can detect cancer early. We have highly trained medical personnel and paramedics. And it is important that we have equipment that they can use for detection and even for radiation. Chemotherapy can be done in this country. And I also want to advise Kenyans that before you run out and use a lot of money on flight, on accommodation, please check with our cancer specialists and let them make referrals. Because the first thing people think of doing when you are told that you have cancer, the first thing the family would think about is to raise money and go for treatment abroad. The lapse of time that is used for raising money to go for treatment abroad could be used for early treatment. So it is my contribution to this particular matter, Honorable Speaker, that Kenyans avoid at their best rushing to go for treatment abroad. That money can be used for mitigating effects of cancer early enough. And as I go down, Honorable Speaker, I want to advise that we come up with systems that zero-rate cancer detectors. It is important that we come up with systems that also, that kind of zero-rate, like if one goes for treatment and they have cancer, that consultation fees on doctors' charges should be reduced, especially for those of us who have already been detected to have cancers, so that more and more people can access treatment. I want to thank the Excellency Honorable Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta for his seriousness on taking up healthcare issues. But I address the Honorable President at this particular time. Please prioritize cancer treatment. You are a hands-on person. The way that you have tried to run this country and bring peace, also bring medical peace in this country. And one of the areas that you should concentrate on, Honorable President, is to look at this scourge of cancer. With those very many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support.
Well, Honorable Cheng, that was a pretty deep contribution at that. I could tell from this end, the members were nodding. Even your neighbors there were nodding in agreement on what you were saying. But very well. Next is Honorable Nul Sophia, member for Ijara. That member seems to have taken leave. Next is Honorable Murugara Gitonga. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for giving me an opportunity.
Order, Honorable Murugara. What is it, Honorable Dr. Otiende Amoro? What is out of order? Honorable Otiende Amoro. Order. Order, Honorable Otiende Amoro. You seem to have pressed an intervention, and you are still busy. I think you are still following up on the conversation with Honorable Gogo. What is out of order?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I had pressed the intervention in terms of a discussion that has gone on in terms of the provisions of the Constitution. And I had wanted to point out a very important fact as we are debating this, because many members are blaming the Constitution for the devolution of health. And Mr. Speaker, sir, I wanted to point out that as we go on with this discussion, we should place the blame where it lies. Because under the Constitution, health was not devolved. Yes, Mr. Speaker.
You know, I am trying to prevent you from contributing to this debate through the back door.
Yes.
What is out of order, Honorable Tiede? Or is it a point of information?
Mr. Speaker, it was, I think it was a point of order so that members do not misdirect their wrath to the Constitution. But I am happy to explain it when my turn comes.
Yes, you will get a chance.
I thought it would save a lot of members, you know, the energy in that misdirection. But I will hold my horses.
I could tell, Honorable Tiendo, you are gravitating towards contributing to this. You shall get a chance, for sure.
I will wait and explain, Mr. Speaker.
Soon,
Thank
and
you.
I can tell where you are on the screen. But Honorable Mugara, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to chip into this great debate that we have this morning as regards what is actually ailing our country in terms of the disease known as cancer. Let me thank the move of this motion, the Honorable Dr. Tekla Tum. It is the appropriate time to keep on discussing about cancer, which is an epidemic in this country and which threatens to kill most of us purely because we are either ignorant or we have not been informed, or there are no sufficient facilities to ensure that we learn of our status in time. Mr. Speaker, recently we debated at length on the establishment of cancer screening and treatment centers in the constituencies. And we passed that motion. It is a motion that now awaits implementation by the Ministry of Health through Committee on Implementation. We did debate and we did agree that in every constituency, it is now appropriate for the national government through the Ministry of Health to establish a cancer screening and treatment center. And I still believe and reiterate that this is the position of this House, and that we must at all times urge our government to ensure that these centers are set up and our people are given the appropriate treatment. It is also very important, especially where there can be vaccines, to have all the children that are likely to be affected, especially the girls, by cervical cancer. Let us, through the Ministry of Health, roll out a program, a vaccination program that will go to the grassroots and have the children vaccinated. By so doing, we would definitely arrest and ameliorate this problem, which is actually devastating our country. I confirm that I would be prepared to take part in the smallest of ways to ensure that such a program does go to my constituency, Tharaka, and that I'm able to receive these vaccines in their truckloads so that I have every child vaccinated. I will also be prepared to ensure that the public is actually informed as regards what the government is doing, the importance of doing this, and that it should be embraced without hesitation. We have heard of cases where vaccines are rolled out by the government and the propaganda sets in immediately with all manner of negative publicity, innuendos, and what else we cannot understand. But this is one aspect that must actually be explained to our citizens, that cancer is an epidemic. It now needs to be arrested. We have watched, and as I speak, I have many of my constituents lying in various hospitals ailing from cancer-related ailments. And it's not just what we've mentioned, which is cervical cancer, which affects women. We have the other types of cancer which have been stated in this house, which have been explained to the country, and the people are aware of what is actually ailing us. And the solution is not anything else. Let us have early screening so that every Kenyan is screened for cancer. Let us have treatment whenever it is possible. And our country is doing very well. As honorable member said, we do not have to go to India. We do not have to go to any of the hospitals out of Kenya. We do have oncologists here who are trained properly, who are qualified, and who can actually give the medical treatment. Therefore, it is my humble submission that we do support this motion. Let us have cancer taken as one of the ailments, the diseases that are negatively affecting our country. It's reducing the population in spite of whatever age it is, whether it is productive age or it is old age, and it is now creeping slowly into children, and therefore it needs to be arrested. So in support of this motion, I urge the government through the Ministry of Health, I urge this House to pass and adopt this motion so that cancer patients, wherever they are, whether they are in a hospital, whether they are at home, wherever they are able to access proper medical attention as regards cancer, whether cervical or whatever other type of cancer that may be afflicting our own people. I therefore beg to support this very important motion. Thank you very much.
Before I go to my right, should we have to my left Honorable Manzo Kitonga?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me a chance to contribute on this very important motion. I have listened to previous contributions, Mr. Speaker, and cancer is one of the biggest problems now, medical problem in the world, not only Kenya. There has been many debates as to what causes cancer and whether GMO causes cancer or not. And many scientists have not been able to agree on this particular one. And as one of the members of parliament has stated before, almost every member of parliament here has a relative or a friend who has been affected by cancer. Personally, my own father died of cancer, and two of my uncles died also of different cancers, including even a cancer of a tooth. And by the time it was discovered by medical experts, it was very difficult to treat it, being, a cancer of the tooth. And the causes are known, cancers of the mouth. And in fact, in some products, they are written, even on cigarette packages, they are written that it's likely to cause mouth cancer, it's likely to cause throat cancer, and therefore whoever uses that particular product is pre-warned. In this particular motion, the one they are dealing with is cervical cancer, and it's a possibility of being prevented by a vaccine. I just Googled before you called me, Mr. Speaker, and I was seeing that although one should still consult their own doctor and probably have a doctor or two to give a second or even a third opinion, that actually cervical cancer can be prevented through a vaccine. And the only precaution given is that you should, at all material time, first consult your doctor, so that we don't debate in this chamber, Mr. Speaker, as if this particular statement we have been given, though the member is a medical doctor, and quite a number of medical doctors in this house have contributed seriously so. Mr. Speaker, I think it's a great thing. It will be a great thing for us as a country to come up with a strategy on how to deal with cancer. Because one, it is a very expensive disease to treat. And two, just a detection, can easily send a family into bankruptcy. And a lot of people have sold all their property just to take care of their children or their spouses or relatives who happens to be looking for cancer treatment. And even very rich people who have all the money possible have been unable to treat this disease sufficiently. And therefore, I believe as a country we should come up with a strategy. And one of the issues which is encouraging is that if detected early, cancer is treatable. And therefore, it is good to encourage as many Kenyans as possible to go for cancer detection or tests. The question is, are Kenyans, no more Kenyans, likely to afford this? And if not so, how do we send this message to every village in this country? How do we balance the national government, as my learned senior Omolo Otiende will say, and the devolution? Whose mandate? And as Parliament, what is our role? Have we set aside funds to make sure that Kenyans can go for free tests and free treatment to a certain extent, so that we can save lives of many, many Kenyans likely to perish of this disease? And when you look at the causes of cancer, most of them are lifestyle. The sort of diet you're engaging, the preservatives in our food. Recently there was a scare of the meat and preservative. Is the preservative safe? Is it likely to excite cells to grow unnaturally? And in the case of cervical cancer, what can be done at early stages? It's one of the contributors before I've said, we can be carriers, of cervical cancer for our partners, and therefore, or spouse. And therefore, this education, is it reaching the common Kenyan down there, so that we can first, through knowledge, people be careful on diet and on habits, because this seems to be the biggest cause. But also we have seen people have been very careful on diet and have avoided possible cancer in their systems, and to our surprise, they have ended up with one cancer or another. They don't smoke, they don't take alcohol, they don't take meat, and then there has also been other researches of some of the foods we use, like apples, and even fermented apples have been said when they are consumed, that they help with oxidation in the system of the body, and therefore somebody who takes that particular fruit, or even when fermented to apple cider vinegar, has lower chances of contracting cancer because of the oxidation after digestion. It turns basic, and no diseases really attack a body when it has basicity in the gastric system. There are all manner of theories, Mr. Speaker, and therefore we are saying research is important. We have to wake up as a nation, present researchers to Kenyans, so that people can have the knowledge, and then it is easier to prevent at the level of knowledge, habits, and the practices. And therefore, some of these good habits, and if it is medically proven, although the case of apple cider vinegar is historical, Really, although doctors have supported it, they still encourage you to consult your doctor because of one possible status in terms of where they could be destined by their current status of health, because you may be using the wrong prescription, you may be prescribed with the wrong disease, yet something else is happening. And there's also a message of hope. That's some cervical cancer has been treated. Others, in other cases, have been prevented. Cancer of the colon, in some cases, have been treated successfully because of the methods the doctors have told us here in this house of what happens and the methods of elimination of cancerous cells. So I believe if we encourage knowledge and we encourage prevention, Mr. Speaker, we'll be saving the economy quite a lot of money, and nothing can be equated to a life saved. So Mr. Speaker, while we pass this motion, it is important that as a nation we keep on sending this message. I wish even the information relayed through television, there could be programs where doctors can go to talk shows and talk to Kenyans, so that Kenyans will get the knowledge. We need now to cooperate with all systems which pass information, from the radio stations to the internet to television programs, so that people, instead of debating politics, we could debate. If doctors could go on these talk shows and talk to people, then people will be convinced. Even this drug for prevention, this injection, how is it going to work on everyone? We have seen situations where people have been inoculated, and then there is a certain percentage of deaths. Where has it been tested? Where is the research? Where is this information, Mr. Speaker? So that as we debate here, we don't just tell Kenyans that, and pass a motion, that you can have a prevention of cancer, cervical cancer for that matter, through an injection. And then some people, where are the tests? Some people go through it and probably they get the cancer now, together with all matters which have been debated here. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't want to say this is a very important debate in the nation. I want to support this motion and urge members to do so. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. I will first recognize 3 schools. At the Speaker's Gallery, we have Bugoma Primary School from Laikipia East Constituency, Laikipia County. At the Public Gallery, we have Wahu Primary School, Kadara Constituency, Muranga County, and Biftu Elite Academy, Isiolo North Constituency, Isiolo County. The 3 schools are welcome to follow and watch the proceedings of the National Assembly. I will now give 2 lady members in a row. First shall be Honorable Wangari from Gilgil, and then Honorable Kasalu from Kitui.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to support this motion. And before I go to the substantial motion, Mr. Speaker, I also wish to note that today coincides with the end of the breastfeeding week, which is celebrated between 1st and 7th of August every year. And though the matter has been settled, Mr. Speaker, I wish to note and notify the House that in 2013, I petitioned the Parliamentary Service Commission to actually put up a creche for members of Parliament who are young and giving birth in this house, and also the staff, Mr. Speaker. In August 2013, that was assented and a paper was churned out. But 6 years later, Mr. Speaker, we still don't have a place where we can sit with our children if you need to and breastfeed or store and pump the milk for the child to take later. And Mr. Speaker, it may look like a small issue, but it really affects the work of members and that of the staff. And at Article 127, it is actually very critical that that is provided, as the PSC is actually mandated to ensure that we are able to do our work uninhibited. And Mr. Speaker, I hope that 6 years have already gone. People have come in this house, 70% of them has gone out, and we are generally a young nation. Let that creche be put up for members, for the staff, for young staff members who are there. And though Honorable Zuleka has already been ordered out of the House, Mr. Speaker, I hope that that is heeded to and provided for so that Article 127 is actually taken care of. Mr. Speaker, to the motion, I want to actually congratulate Honorable Dr. Tum for bringing this motion. I don't think there is any member of this House who has not been affected by cancer. Every week, we are having fundraisers. Every week, we are having funerals. This parliament, the 13th parliament, Mr. Speaker, has lost 4 members, 1 senator and 3 members of the National Assembly to the scourge of cancer. So in terms of how deep it cuts, I think we have already felt it, Mr. Speaker. And the issue of early detection is key. And the decisions we make today, especially to our children, protect the future that we'll be dealing with in 20 years, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think what we need to actually look into, I know there's a bill that has been proposed, I haven't seen it yet, for making sure that this cancer is actually declared a national disaster. Because, Mr. Speaker, when that is done and happens, what happens that we'll put money to where our mouth is, that we allocate proper resources for education, not just for HPV, Mr. Speaker, but a global view of the cancers that are affecting this country. We will allocate money for education. Donors will be able to put money for early detection of cancer, because, Mr. Speaker, unless we are able to do that, we will keep yapping and talking, and it will just be a talk house, Mr. Speaker. But I'm very apprehensive of a motion in this House, Mr. Speaker, and this maybe goes to the Committee of Implementation, because we pass motions in this House, but how do we follow to ensure that they're implemented? If it's a bill, it becomes part of the laws of the country, but if it's a motion, people talk to it, yet it just stops there, Mr. Speaker. I hope that we get the Committee of Implementation to follow up. HPV, and not just HPV, Mr. Speaker, recently, those of us with young children, the country had run out of polio vaccine. Can you imagine that? You'll go to hospitals and they say it's not available because maybe we over-depended on donors or lack of proper planning. Mr. Speaker, we are endangering a whole generation, Mr. Speaker, when we joke with vaccinations, and we hope that this HPV could be included with other, even meningitis, Mr. Speaker, which is very expensive to access as a vaccine, Mr. Speaker. If we are able to look into the school-going children, we'll be able to save generations, Mr. Speaker. The other issue is to the county governments, Mr. Speaker. I know they are struggling with their issues of recurrent expenditure, but I hope we can be able to eventually implement the Abuja declaration, Mr. Speaker, that more than 15%, not less than 15% of the county allocations go to health. That, Mr. Speaker, will be able to ensure that what we are talking of, I'm seeing some governors organizing random checkups, Mr. Speaker, can be a continuous process. Because if you do just once, because there is a lot of media noise, there is a lot of high-flying people who have died, then after 2-3 weeks, that story dies off, Mr. Speaker. It should be a continuous process to be able to check out, Mr. Speaker, because I'm looking at even the other areas where, or other techniques where we are able to detect cancer, like say a PET scan, which is a nuclear imaging technique, Mr. Speaker. To get one in this country, I think it's only one hospital that has it, I'm not sure, but to get it, Mr. Speaker, is 100,000. We are talking of people living under $1 in a day, Mr. Speaker. To get 100,000, to be able to go through a body checkup, to check whether you have any cancer in your body, Mr. Speaker, how many will be able to afford? It will not be possible, Mr. Speaker. So even as we pass motions in this House, Mr. Speaker, I pray that you are able to do an overview, a global look, Mr. Speaker, not just HPV, but every other cancer, Mr. Speaker, so that we are able to prevent more than cure, and also make it manageable in the areas where it has gone beyond cure, and that touches, Mr. Speaker, to palliative care. And I say that because I've had a cancer patient, Mr. Speaker. The pain gets to some level and it's almost impossible. The palliative care, where you'll need a nurse maybe to come to your house, because even keeping them in the hospital won't add any more life to them, Mr. Speaker. It gets to that level, and I know many families have suffered, Mr. Speaker, and this palliative care needs education. People need to be told, the doctors need to tell them the truth, and Mr. Speaker, even the chemo we are using, we need to do proper investigation to see whether it is the right one, Mr. Speaker, so that we can be able to advise patients that if I have some level and chemotherapy will just worsen it. I'm told as much, Mr. Speaker, not just impoverishing families, Mr. Speaker, because how it is today, you have spent everything. You sell your properties, you sell your land, you sell livestock, but the patient ends up just passing. Even after you have gone broke, Mr. Speaker, you have suffered in the hands of this monster, Mr. Speaker. So I hope we can invest more. I hope the universities can also take it up in terms of study, in terms of research, that they can be able to get ways and advise the government and the Ministry of Health on how we can better the screening, how we can better the treatment, and how we can even better the palliative care to cancer patients, Mr. Speaker. And with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support.
Next, yes, Honorable Kasalu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to add my voice on this very important motion. As I begin, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Tekla Tum for bringing up this very important motion, which has come at a time that, as a country, we have seen how terrible cancer is, as it has taken quite a number of our members here. As a person myself, I've experienced cancer. I lost my mother to cancer of the cervix, and I'm very sure that if it had been detected earlier, my mother-in-law would be alive today. Let me begin by saying that according to USA National Cancer Institute, cancer is a term used for diseases, for diseases in which abdominal cells divide without control and can invade other tissues. Cancer cells can spread to other parts of the body through the blood and lymph systems. And cancer is not just a disease, but is many diseases. And we have over 100 kinds of cancer. Cancer of the cervix is one of the many types of cancer, and if it's diagnosed early, it is treatable. And getting tested regularly may find breast cancer, cervical cancer, cancer of the colon, and that way we can easily get the best way to treat them. Mr. Speaker, this motion also seeks to have vaccine to our girls and the boys, and I want to say that vaccination helps to lower the risk of cancer and also helps to prevent many cancers, including cervical cancer. Mr. Speaker, I would like also to say that even as a nation, we need to come up with ways of preventing cancer. Not just wait for us to be tested and we go for treatment, but even preach healthy choices, because we have heard from medical researchers and many bodies that are mandated with research of cancer that if you live a healthy life, and making healthy choices like having a healthy weight or keeping the required and recommended weight for your body, avoiding tobacco, limiting the amount of the alcohol you drink, protecting your skin, and as many colleagues have said here, and also through research, having one sexual partner. So these ways we need to preach them. Probably we may also need to have this taught to our pupils even in schools. I remember when I speak to my sons, one who is around 10 years old, is already aware that there is a disease called HIV and is aware of how HIV is spread and how somebody can get HIV. So I think and I feel that as this house, we need to as well to preach and advocate for civic education so that we can as well take cancer seriously as we have taken with education of HIV, and have our children and have everybody understand about cancer, how you can get it, how you can prevent it, how you can have early detection, although we are aware that this detection is not easily available to everybody. And that's why we thank the Honorable Member for coming with this bill, because it seeks to have this detection, to have vaccination to our boys and girls, and also call upon the member to also include all the types of cancer, include everybody in this motion, because it's a very important motion and it touches on everybody, not just our boys and girls. And as we have heard, we have said that this is especially the cancer is sexually transmitted. So So the reason why we need to add even other people, because our boys and girls, they are at risk, but the people even who are more at risk are the people who are already sexually active. So it's very important to have everybody on board so that we can fight this disease. So as I finish, Mr. Speaker, I want to propose that it's important that we have fully equipped hospitals in every county that can do early detection and also treatment of cancer. In the last few weeks, after we lost our members, we have had medical professionals come out and say that one of also the challenges that we have in this country is the number of oncologists we have. I think we have had them say we have around 8. So it's very important that even the government puts money to have more oncologists trained so that they can be put in every county hospital. And that way, when our people go to the hospitals and they are being treated and they're being done diagnosis, there will be people who have the right knowledge to be able to do, to look at their analysis, and that way the disease is well picked at an early stage. So I want to stop there and thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support this very important motion. Thank you.
Shall we have Honorable Dr. Otiende Amolo?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, I support this motion under advisement because whereas the motion is well placed, Mr. Speaker, I feel it does not go far enough. And I will not repeat what the honorable colleagues have said. I think that to the extent that cancer is admittedly the third most serious killer in this country, and to the extent that cancer has affected very many people, I think that when we talk about cancer, a motion about cancer ought not to be titled screening for women. It should be screening for men and women, including boys and girls. Only then do we treat it seriously. I also think, Mr. Speaker, that it should not just be restricted to cervical cancer. It should cover all forms of cancer. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, whereas screening is a good thing, screening without more can be a bad thing, in my considered opinion. Screening must be accompanied by treatment or management to the extent that up to certain stages, cancer can be treatable, and beyond certain stages, it may be managed. Any recommendation on screening must come hand in hand with a recommendation for free treatment and management by the government. And in this case, whether it be national government or whether it be county government, it must clearly be stipulated so. Only then can we meaningfully deal with the scourge of cancer in the present time. But Mr. Speaker, in addition to that, it has been suggested that perhaps it would aid in this process if cancer were declared a national disaster. We have previously declared national disaster, including HIV and AIDS, which after it was declared a national disaster, it was followed by certain actions, including free treatment. It was followed by certain actions, including legislation. I would suggest that alongside a motion such as this, and alongside all other measures that we consider, we should also consider that idea of declaring cancer a national disaster, if for no other purpose, but to draw the attention of Kenyans generally to the issue of cancer. I also think on that point that we have failed our people, especially the national government. We cry about cancer, but we seem not to have invested sufficiently to find out where there's such an incremental number of cancer cases in the last 2 or so decades. All the reasons that have been stated as causes of cancers are reasons that have always been there. And therefore, it cannot explain the exponential increment in the number of cancer cases. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, lastly, I wish to make it clear that whereas cancer is a problem, and whereas we have urged the government to act, there are those who have said, and usually the national government has said, that health is devolved, and therefore there's only so much that the national government can do. And it has led to the suggestion that as we are thinking about reworking our constitution, we should reconsider the idea of devolution of health. I must say, Mr. Speaker, that there are some constituencies that have done very well in terms of health. And the idea of devolving health may have worked in some constituencies. But looking at the country as a whole, it has not generally worked. Because there are many more constituencies where it has failed than where it has worked. But I must say, Mr. Speaker, that the blame on the constitution is not entirely well grounded. It must be remembered that the idea to devolve health as a big bang theory came after the first summit in 2013, where the president and the governors met and it was resolved to devolve health. It was not a requirement of the constitution. It is still not a wholesome requirement of the constitution. Mr. Speaker, we are suffering the decision that was made at the summit, and we are suffering the misinterpretations by the bodies that were charged to implement the constitution that misled people to believe that health was devolved. Mr. Speaker, I wish to draw my colleagues' attention to Schedule 4 that defines the respective functions. And if you go to Schedule 4, if you go to Part 2, Sub-Article 2, you will find that the only things that were devolved was what was called county health facilities. When we were writing the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, we contemplated the county health facilities to be those facilities that were previously run by the municipal councils, including dispensaries. What is devolved again is what is called primary health care, which was always run at that level. And beyond that, what is devolved are things like ambulances, things like licensing, things like dispensaries. The national government retained the primary domain of dealing with health. And that is why in Part 1, Schedule 4, Part 1, specifically paragraph 23, the national referral hospitals are still retained for the national government. It was contemplated that in at least each county, what is currently called the county health facilities would be converted to national health referral hospitals. The health policy under Part 26 is still retained for the national government. It is up to the national government to detail in a detailed health policy, which can also be brought to us, what is it that they would want the county government to retain in terms of primary health care, in terms of county health facilities, and what is it that they can retain. In other words, Mr. Speaker, as we speak today, there is nothing in the Constitution to stop the national government from recalling and dealing with the scourge of cancer. More importantly, Article 186 of Article 3 makes it very clear that any function that is not expressly devolved is retained by the national government. To that extent, all the general issues of health have not been expressly devolved to the counties. Mr. Speaker, I support this motion and advisement that we need to do more. We need to do more generally as Parliament. We need to do more as a country if we will contain this scourge of cancer. And we need to disabuse ourselves of the supposition that the provisions of the Constitution can constrain us. They do not constrain us. With that, I support, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Shall I recognize at the public gallery, Kamasai Education Center from Tideret constituency, Nandi County. That school is welcome to watch the proceedings of the National Assembly. Next, we shall have Honorable Lisa Chepkoril, Nakuru County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity to also contribute to this motion that was brought to this floor by Honorable Dr. Tegla Tum. And before I do so, Mr. Speaker, sir, on behalf of my honorable members of parliament, may I take this opportunity to welcome all the schools attending this session, and I believe all what they are going to learn here is going to add value to their learning in their various institutions, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to congratulate all the members who have actually spoken about this motion. Mr. Speaker, sir, as we talk today, as representative of the people at home are really suffering. The disease is actually sweeping people at home, and they are suffering, not only dying, but they are also losing their resources through treatment, Mr. Speaker, sir. I just want to talk about the treatment that is normally done outside this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think at this time of need, the people of this country should receive treatment in this country rather than going outside or out of the country to receive treatment, Mr. Speaker, sir, because this one is very expensive and it is really giving a lot of problems to the patients. Mr. Speaker, sir, my honorable members have also spoken about early screening. Early screening is very important. It is paramount because we need to sensitize the community of the importance of early screening. And the screening should be done at each and every sub-county hospitals. We believe we have sub-county hospitals in our various sub-counties. The screening should actually be done in those hospitals to ease the issue of transportation. Mr. Speaker, sir, as we are discussing about this virus, the virus that brings about the issue of cervical cancer, it came into my mind that sensitization should be done at the community level because many people do not even know about the virus that brings about the cervical cancer. So there is need to do a lot of civic education, there is need to do a lot of sensitization, and this should actually be enhanced by the government, the way it is being enhanced during polio and during HIV exercises that takes place. I know the issue of HIV, the issue of polio eradication has been reduced just because sensitization was done, and it was done thoroughly. When it is done thoroughly, it is when it has been organized by the government itself. Mr. Speaker, sir, the treatment should actually be free, and we should do a lot of, the government should do a lot of research about this disease, Mr. Speaker, sir. We don't know what brings it. Some of us, we are guessing it could be chemicals that are used in farm or farm chemicals. We need to do a lot of research about the chemicals that farmers uses in this country. For example, Mr. Speaker, sir, there is this issue of the issue of using the Roundups in our farms and other chemicals. These Roundups has been stopped in other countries, other developed countries. They have been stopped. Developed countries have stopped using some chemicals that are suspected to be bringing cancer. And I don't know why in Africa or in Kenya we are still using the same chemicals. So there is need to do a lot of research about the chemicals that we use as farmers, the chemicals that we use each and every time we want to mitigate an issue in the country. Mr. Speaker, sir, when we talk about research, there is a process during the cancer treatment. There is a process called chemotherapy. And chemotherapy is a tedious process. It is a very tedious process to a patient. And this is because all the cells are attacked. During that process, it is not only cancer cells that are being killed, but even safe viruses are also affected. And it is very, very, very tedious for a patient. And I'm wondering, I'm a lay person, I'm not a doctor, Mr. Speaker, sir, but I'm wondering as to why a doctor or the concerned people should choose to use chemotherapy, a process that kills all the cells in the body rather than targeting the cancer cells alone. We wonder as to why such a thing should be, such a process should be applied to a patient. So there is need for thorough research. Mr. Speaker, sir, as we bring motions or bills to the floor, and every time we pass those motions or bills, the problem is that there is a probability that it cannot be implemented. So the most important thing in everything, every kind of motion that is brought to this floor or every bill, it should actually go to the level of implementation, because that is the most important thing for us to achieve what we are talking on this floor. For us to achieve what we every time speak on behalf of those who elected us, it is implementation. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I believe today, as we are passing this motion, I don't know whether we are going to exhaust it today, but the moment this motion is passed, it is a very important motion and it should be implemented. Mr. Speaker, sir, today we are standing here, we are crying on behalf of our people. People are dying, and they are dying in a situation, in a very bad situation, because the treatment of cancer is very expensive. So every time a family spends all their resources, and at the end, a patient will die. So it is like losing double. It is like losing they are losing their resources, and at the same time, the probability of having the patient surviving is very, 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 very minimal. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm fully behind this motion that has been brought by Dr. Tum, and I fully support it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Next is Mwale Tindi, member for Butere.
Asante, asante Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, na nimeona nichangie katika lugha yetu ya kitaifa kwa sababu wenzangu wamechangia katika lugha ya Kimombo, na vile unajua na vile kila Mkenya anajua ni ya kwamba hili jangwa la ugonjwa wa saratani limetishia Wakenya wengi sana. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, naanza na kupigia asante kubwa kunipea nafasi kuchangia katika huu mswada ambao unaongea kuhusu uchunguzi wa saratani ya kizazi. Kwanza Bwana Spika, nataka nijulishe Wakenya ya kwamba ukiangalia ile utafiti ambao umefanywa na serikali inaonyesha ya kwamba ugonjwa wa saratani ndio ambao unasababisha vifo vingi. Ni ugonjwa wa 3 kusababisha vifo vingi katika nchi yetu ya Kenya. Utapata ya kwamba 7% ya vifo ambavyo tunapata katika nchi yetu kila mwaka unasababishwa na ugonjwa wa saratani. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, nataka tu kujulisha Wakenya kwa ujumla ya kwamba ni ugonjwa wa saratani unafaa upewe ile utafiti ambao unafaa, na pia serikali inafaa izingatie kununua vifaa ambavyo vitasaidia Wakenya haswa kwa kupimwa ya mapema, ili wajue ni mbinu gani watatibu huo ugonjwa wa saratani. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, jambo la kwanza, mimi naunga wenzangu mkono kwa kusema ya kwamba serikali inafaa iongeze vifaa katika hospitali, na pia serikali inafaa izingatie kuelimisha Wakenya kuhusu ugonjwa wa saratani na ni njia gani wananchi wanaweza kuepuka ugonjwa wa saratani, kama vile kutotumia vyakula ambavyo vinaleta dalili ya ugonjwa wa saratani. Na pia Bwana Spika, naimiza serikali ifanye ile ambayo tunaita uchunguzi na kuelimisha wananchi jinsi ya kuepuka ugonjwa wa saratani, na pia njia mwafaka ambayo wanaweza tumia kutibu ugonjwa wa saratani. Kwa hivyo njia mwafaka ambayo serikali inafaa kufanya, Bwana Spika, nakumbuka mwaka wa in quote 1992 serikali kuu ilikuja ikasema ya kwamba ugonjwa wa malaria ulikuwa ugonjwa jangwa la kitaifa. Kwa hivyo naomba pia serikali kuu, tumefikia kiwango ambacho inafaa iseme ama itangaze ya kwamba ugonjwa wa saratani ni jangwa la kitaifa, na kwa hivyo kila Mkenya apate nafasi ya kuelimishwa na tupate hospitali zetu zinapewa vifaa na wagonjwa wanapewa matibabu ambayo yako na teknolojia ya juu zaidi, ili tupate vile Wakenya wataishi bila uoga, na pia tupate ya kwamba ugonjwa wa saratani hautasababisha vifo vingi katika nchi yetu ya Kenya. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, mimi nashukuru Daktari Mheshimiwa Tekla Tum kuleta huu mswada ambao unaongea kuhusu saratani ya kizazi, lakini mimi naonelea kwamba vile ameleta saratani ya kizazi, tuchukue tu kwa ujumla saratani kiujumla, kwa sababu saratani katika nchi yetu ya Kenya iko na njia mingi ambayo inadhuru wananchi, na kama tutasema ya kwamba tuende tu na saratani ya kizazi peke yake, basi tutapoteza watu wengi ambao wanaugua saratani ambayo sio ya kizazi. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, nakurudishia shukran kunipea nafasi kuchangia katika huu mswada, na narudishia Mheshimiwa Tekla Tum shukran kubwa. Asante sana Bwana Spika.
Well, honorable members, I was very keen to have at least 2 other lady members of Parliament contribute to this based on the subject. But look, it is 12:25. We have more than 15 members who want to speak to this. But as you know, within our rules, this motion is time-bound. It was started at 12:25, so at 12:34, not 12:34, 12:24, the mover shall have 10 minutes to reply. But the mover could be gracious enough to donate part of that 10 minutes to any member. But the mover now, it is your time to reply. I'm told you it is Honorable Halima for and on behalf of Honorable Tekla Tum. Yes, Honorable Halima Musheke. Order, yes, you need to be on record.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Before I contribute and reply, I wish to donate 2 minutes each to Honorable John Mburu and Honorable Janet, my neighbors here. Thank you.
Honorable Mburu.
Thank you, Madam Musheke. Halima, I'm not the one who is donating. It is Halima who is donating. So
Honorable Mburu, you know you have time, limited time. Eh?
I'm in support of this motion. You should protect me, Speaker. This one is making noise to me. You know, we are in support of the order. I've been going around and I've seen many doctors.
What is out of order, Honorable Nyaga Nkandha?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to request Honorable Halima, instead of giving 2, you should give 1 each so that we can also have an opportunity, if possible. Yes. Thank you.
Order, Honorable Nyaga. She has already given. We can't take that back.
I think Halima has
Order, Honorable Mburu. Honorable Halima, possibly, she could still donate you 1 more minute after the 2 have spoken. But for now, we have Honorable Mburu to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'm hoping that mine is not started counting yet because they are interrupting me. But we are in support of this so much. We are in support of early screening of cancer. And I've seen doctors going with some gadgets. Some international gadgets are coming into Kenya that they are supposed to screen cancer, cervical and breast cancer. I hope the government should be able also to monitor these gadgets that are coming in. They are saying that they can move around with them so that you can be tested on the spot anywhere. Then we'll also have a lot of fake testing and fake screening. So we should have a process of making sure that the gadgets that are coming in are well checked so that they don't give false alarms and false reports. But I'm in support that we should have early screening of cancer. We should teach our children to have hygiene. We should also be against early sex and also sex everywhere, because cervical cancer is transmitted, this HPV virus is transmitted through sex. And we should also teach our children that when they are doing sex, they should have safe sex. I think as I support Madam Lillian Gogo, the way she said that we have to have sex education, I think it is an issue of priority now today, so that we can be able to protect cervical cancer and other cancers. Thank you, Madam Halima, and God bless you.
Honorable CTNA.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity, and I want to thank Mheshimiwa Halima for giving me 1 minute. I also stand to support this motion, and at the onset I want to thank Honorable Tekla Tum for bringing this very important motion. Mr. Speaker, most of the poverty that is realized in the villages at the moment is because of the bills that are incurred by our people because of this disease called cancer, which is one of the leading causes of death in our nation today. And cervical cancer is also one of the leading causes of death to women. And therefore, I support this motion and request that the government allow free cancer screening for women and also issuance of the HPV, human papilloma virus vaccine, to our boys and girls in schools to be able to prevent the onset of cancer and also for early treatment of cancer. And at the same time, I want to request that the government could also get some money put aside in for research of cancer in this nation. I also want to say that KEBS should up their game, because cancer is one of the lifestyle diseases. They should be able to maintain standards of the foods that are imported into our country, and even the inputs that we use in planting our crops, that KEBS should actually take lead in maintaining those standards. Finally, I also want to say that we want to request that we put some money aside to reduce the cost of drugs for treatment of cancer, but more so preventive.
Honorable Halima, did you donate any further?
Honorable Speaker, the demand is too high, so I'm not sure that I'm able to still donate. Unless I can donate half a minute maybe to Honorable Zambia, Honorable Eika and Honorable Nkat. Half a minute each.
What do they say in half a minute? But anyway, yes, Honorable Kitonga.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me thank the Honorable colleague for just donating a minute to actually contribute on this motion. Firstly, having now in our knowledge that everybody is now aware that we have this epidemic by the name cancer, it is now the highest time. Now the government involves itself to conduct civic education even up to the village levels, so that now people can understand better what this cancer is. What I can actually say is that we need to invest a lot in the research as a government. So I urge the government to actually set aside some good money so that we can conduct enough research to know and educate people on the correct and to make aware and create awareness to our people, so that there are a lot of narratives going around.
Honorable Mizigi Mnene.
Shukran sana Mr. Speaker kwa kunipatia fursa hiyo. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Musheke kwa kunipatia pia fursa hiyo, na mimi niweke sauti yangu hapa kwa kuhusiana na masuala haya ya hii saratani. Na Mr. Speaker, nitasema kwa ufupi ya kwamba namshukuru Daktari Tum kwa kuleta mswada huu, kwa sababu saratani kwa sasa imekuwa ndo wakati mwafaka wa kuiongelea, kwa sababu tumeona tumepoteza wenzetu kwa sababu ya saratani hii. Na nitasema ya kwamba kwa mswada huu kuongeza tu ni kwamba
tupimwe, kila mtu apimwe saratani, si vijana peke yake ama wasichana, hata wazee, hata kina mama, sote tupimwe. Alafu niseme kwamba serikali ni wakati iwekeze zaidi kwa masuala ya saratani, ili tuweze kupata madaktari wenye ufahamu wa mambo ya saratani, manasi, na tuwe na vifaa dhabiti vya kuweza kutusaidia katika matibabu, na pia kutengwe pesa kwa ajili ya
Nyaga, I'm afraid 30 seconds was quite a little time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Mheshimiwa Arima, for giving me the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, it's very important that we screen cancer before it grows. It is said that prevention is better than cure, Mr. Speaker, and we need to do exactly that. The Kenya government does not have enough resources, Mr. Speaker, to cater for the cancer, either cervical or any other cancer, Mr. Speaker. Kenyans are suffering, Mr. Speaker. They cannot afford the treatment of cancer because it is quite expensive. So we need to support our Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, and also do a lot of civic education, train them so that they can be able to know when to go for the screening. It is also important to talk to our young boys and young girls because cancer is affecting everyone, the old and the young. So the government is supposed to have enough resources so that we can be able to take care of our Kenyans. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Shall we now have Honorable Arima? I can tell Honorable Nzamba walked all the way to thank you for donating a bit of time to him. But now, Honorable Arima, please, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I wish to also add my voice to this very important motion that was brought to the floor of this House by Honorable Tum, who is away on official duty. Honorable Speaker, as all the members have rightly put it, cancer has become a monster that is so scary and needs to be faced with all the might and resources. I remember, Mr. Speaker, when HIV had become so serious, we used to be told that you are either affected or infected. Today, the same can be said of cancer. Honorable Speaker, early screening is very important, and this can help curb most deaths that are caused by the cancer that is detected at the 3rd and the 4th stage. Early screening is also makes treatment easy. As I saw recently, Honorable Speaker, I had traveled to India on official duty, but I took time off to seek treatment for myself and checkup. Honorable Speaker, I met very many Kenyans there in India, and most of them were there due to cancer. Honorable Speaker, it is very expensive, and it is also very draining emotionally. You find that most of the people have to go to India with their relatives, or aides, or maybe a family member, and they have to seek accommodation despite the expenses they need in treatment. Honorable Speaker, I also got to learn that there are particular painkillers that we are taking here back home, that we prescribe for ourselves, that we administer just on the counters of the chemists, that are very dangerous. And Kenyans need to know that painkillers, I don't want to mention the particular painkiller, but there's a particular painkiller that is causing kidney failure. Maybe whoever wants to know more can look for me privately, I'll inform them. Honorable Speaker, as we have heard from most of the speakers, cancer is preventable. And especially this particular cancer, the cervix cancer, can be prevented, and therefore that is why the mover of this this motion decided to deal with cervical cancer, because it is easy to vaccinate and also prevent. Honorable Speaker, according to researchers affiliated to the National Cancer Institute of Kenya, the cost of vaccinating against cancer would average at 15,000 for all the 3 injections per person, while the cost of treating cancer ranges between 172,000 and 759,000 Kenya shillings. And when surgery is involved, the cost ranges between 672,000 and 1.25 million. Honorable Speaker, I can see that I don't have a lot of time, but I want to comment about a particular video that has been video clip that has been doing rounds. Back in 2010, I saw a video whereby the Honorable Kioni was asking the then CEO of KEBS about maize that had been released to the market. And that maize was believed to have aflatoxin. And Mr. Mangeli put it that in 10 or so years, the effects of the aflatoxin that was in the maize would be felt. And I think that is what is happening to Kenyans right now. We are feeling the effects of the maize that we consumed 10 years early. And therefore, it is important for our government to get serious. And also, when we know such...
You reply. Give her a chance to say you reply.
With those remarks, Honorable Speaker, I wish to reply. I beg to reply.
Very well. Honorable Halima, what is it, Honorable Duati? What is the intervention for?
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I wanted to request under Section 53 of the Standing Orders, we defer putting of the question to another time.
Well, in the circumstances, I agree with you. We shall pay putting the question on that particular motion to a subsequent time. Allow me to recognize at the Speaker's Gallery, Wero Secondary School from Oljororo constituency, Nyandarua County, and the public gallery, we have Rian Academy, Bureti constituency, Kericho County. We also have in Kudhika Sunday School from Igambangombe constituency, Tharaka-Nithi County. We also have DB Kadhambi Primary School from Igembe South constituency, Meru County. They are all welcome to follow the proceedings of the National Assembly. What is it, Honorable Limo? Joseph, what is out of order?
Mr. Speaker, this morning we had requested the Speaker to allow us to table a report, which is very important, and I was only alerting you, Mr. Speaker, that I'm ready to table.
Okay, yes, that is in line with the Speaker's direction earlier on. Please, please proceed. Was it just tabling or even motion?
I'll table the report and then move a notice of motion.
You may table.
All right. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Wednesday, August 7, 2019. Report of the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning on the acquisition of National Bank of Kenya by Kenya Commercial Bank Group PLC. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Should you proceed on the notice?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion. That this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning on the acquisition of National Bank of Kenya by Kenya Commercial Bank Group PLC, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, August 7, 2019. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next order.
Order number 11, the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 6 of 2019, second reading.
So have you thought? Okay, very well, honorable members. The mover of that, the second reading of that bill, Honorable Didi Nyoro, had actually part moved the second reading of that bill, and Honorable Didi Nyoro isn't present now, so we'll step that down. Because he needs to complete the remaining part that he had to move that bill. So in the circumstances, we'll put that down and then get to the next order.
Order number 12, the Employment Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 15 of 2019, second reading.
Honorable Mother Wangari.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to move the Employment Amendment Bill 2019. And Mr. Speaker, this bill is a straightforward bill. It's a bill that relates to something that has been previously seen as an unconventional way of starting a family. It's a bill relating to adoption, Mr. Speaker. The infertility rates in Kenya, Mr. Speaker, have not been so documented, but the doctors estimate that in every healthy population, 10% suffer from infertility, Mr. Speaker. And there are many ways of becoming parents, Mr. Speaker, one of them being adoption, Mr. Speaker. The challenge in the Employment Act, as it is, Mr. Speaker, is that if I adopt a baby today, even if it's 6 weeks old or 1 month old, I do not get a break at all in terms of a leave, maternity leave or paternity leave for men. So this is to expand the meaning and the accommodation of maternity and paternity leave. That is guided by Article 53 of the Constitution, where the rights of the child have actually been taken care of, the right to parental care has been taken care of, the right to be protected has been taken care of, Mr. Speaker. As we speak today, 50,000 children are in children's home, Mr. Speaker. About 600 of them will eventually be adopted, maybe by the end of the year. But so many fall along the way because the adoption societies, Mr. Speaker, require that you stay with the child for a continuous 3 months to be able to be assessed and given the go-ahead. And the adoption process in this country, Mr. Speaker, is quite tedious because you have to apply and make a formal application, Mr. Speaker, with an adoption agency. You have to declare your financial capacity of taking care of a child. You have to be of proper mental capacity. You must not be a convict. You must not have been convicted in court or in jail, Mr. Speaker. And you must divulge as much information at that stage as possible. What happens after you apply, Mr. Speaker, for formal adoption, for formal application, Mr. Speaker? You'll get a social worker. If the adoption society feels that you could adopt a baby, Mr. Speaker, you are given a social worker. This social worker will be with you at your workplace, will talk to your family members, will talk to your friends, will talk to people who know you to be able to say whether you are capable of bringing a child home, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, after that, you'll get a counselor. You have to be taken through what it means to adopt a child who is not biologically yours. What that means, Mr. Speaker, is that every member of the family who is expected to stay with that child will be taken through a counseling process. And at the end of the day, the Ministry of Labor, through the National Adoption Committee, will select a selection committee that will actually get the report from the social worker and will get the report from the counselor. They will say, so and so is not of mental capacity to have a child or to have a child home. So they may reject your application, but if they agree that you go on with the adoption, Mr. Speaker, that is exactly where now the process begins. Mr. Speaker, today we have spoken about children a lot in this house. How women sometimes have to choose between having their babies and going to work. If you are living in Rongai and you have been given a go-ahead to adopt a child who is 2 months, and the adoption society wants to see you, how you stay with that child, they want to see continuous interaction. For you to be at work at 8 in the morning, you leave Rongai at 5 a.m. By the time you go back, it is 10 p.m. at night. Most people fail that test, not because they are not compatible with the children, but because they don't get the chance to be able to demonstrate that they have the capacity to be able to go ahead with the adoption, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that is where this bill comes in. If you read Article 29 of the Mother Bill, that is the Employment Act, as it is today, it contemplates leave for only biological children, not the ones that are brought forward through surrogacy. And surrogacy here, Mr. Speaker, means someone else renting a womb as as it's called, that if I'm not able to carry a child, I can rent a womb and someone else carries that child. You are not given maternity leave to bond with your child, even when you're the commissioning parent. It also applies to the adoptive children, Mr. Speaker. And every time a child stays in a children's home, when they are below 3 months or they are below 6 months, Mr. Speaker, they lose 1 month of development. For this reason, Mr. Speaker, this is to expand that meaning and to be able to encourage as more people to do the adoption, Mr. Speaker. I know many questions have been raised on how it's done, Mr. Speaker, but I want to say that the laws are very clear. Our Children's Act is very clear. There are people who cannot adopt children. If you are a lone person from the US, from outside the country, you can't just come in and adopt a child. It's a tedious process, Mr. Speaker. At the end of the day, it ends to court. It is the court that actually gives a go-ahead to be able to take a child home. It also gives you a time that you cannot travel with that child outside the country, Mr. Speaker. So this Article 29 is actually discriminative to parents who start families through other means. It is discriminative to those that cannot be able to biologically bear children, and it does not encourage the taking of the many children that we are having in children's homes, Mr. Speaker, home to where they can be taken care of and cared for by proper families. Mr. Speaker, I know we have had a lot of social breakdown and, in this country. We have had children being thrown in pits, children being killed, even people who suffer from postpartum and are not able to take care of a child, they just kill them. Mr. Speaker, if we are able to make adoption easier and more straightforward in this country, we will get so many of these children off the streets, we will get them out of the children's homes, and we'll be able to give them proper homes and conducive areas where they can grow up to be productive members of the society. Mr. Speaker, therefore, this bill will be able to look into those issues, especially Children's Act number 8 of 01, Article 157. It clearly said that a child to be adopted must be under continuous care of the applicant for a period of at least 3 months consecutive. That means, Mr. Speaker, if you are not able to do consecutive months, you lose out because you are not able to demonstrate that part of Article 157. Mr. Speaker, by having the employers actually recognize that these are also parents, we'll be able to open up and give more people the go-ahead to be able to bring more children home, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of placement of a child is very critical. And as I was explaining in the statement and the process, Mr. Speaker, is that when you have been cancelled and a report has been favorable to you, they will look for a child that closely resembles you for obvious reasons. That is what we call matching. So that the questions don't arise, the stigma associated with it, but you're not allowed to choose as an applicant, Mr. Speaker. The Adoption Society places a child in your care after they have compared how you look as a couple if you are the adopting parents, and they will be able to give you a child that closely looks either like you or like your wife or a combination of both. That is how it is, Mr. Speaker. And the reason is that we also don't want to give a scenario where people want to choose designer babies, Mr. Speaker. That's what they are called in the adoption world. That they just want the very beautiful, the yellow. That is how you end up just choosing. It does not happen, Mr. Speaker. The law is very clear. The Children's Act is very clear. And at the end of the day, that process does not take a day. It takes almost 6 months. It takes even up to a year, Mr. Speaker, depending on how the process flows. Mr. Speaker, I have gotten a lot of interest on this bill. And I know and I want to appreciate the Committee of Labor and Social Welfare. They sat and scrutinized this bill. They called for public participation. Adoption societies were able to represent their views. Adoption parents were able to represent their views. And what, Mr. Speaker, was very obvious is that they brought out from their report that the need to balance between the employer and the employee in terms of giving them a break. And I know I've also been asked by lawyers, Mr. Speaker. I have one letter here from A&K, or Anjwara and Kana, and they actually put their views that they feel that the fact that we have put in the bill just married women and men, it feels like it's actually unconstitutional and discriminates from single parents from adoption. And I tend to agree to some extent, Mr. Speaker, because most of the people who adopt are actually single parents. And there are rules for single parents to adopt. If I'm a woman, the child must be 1 year younger than me. I must be an adult, at least 25 years and above. And you must demonstrate the capacity to bring up a child. And the same applies to men, Mr. Speaker. Of course, more women adopt. And because more women adopt, Mr. Speaker, more girls are adopted, because you're not supposed to adopt. There are tougher rules to adopt a boy if you're a woman, or to adopt a girl if you're a man, for obvious reasons, Mr. Speaker. That means then more boys are left in the children's orphanages as we speak today, and they grow up to 18 years. And those are also societal concerns, Mr. Speaker. But this bill, Mr. Speaker, restricts not to just the process, but to opening up the issue of maternity leave. We want to make it uniform by other people, like other people who get the children biologically. And Mr. Speaker, that's why we have saying the women get 3 months and the man gets 2 weeks. But the issue of age, Mr. Speaker, is something that we'll also consider at the committee stage. I want to confirm to this House that we also don't want to leave it very open, that we want to say infant, 1 year and below, so that we can be able to avoid abuse of the process. When you're adopting a child who is 10 years, you cannot be claiming to get maternity leave, Mr. Speaker. This is to apply for infants from 6 weeks, as by the law, all the way to 1 year of age, Mr. Speaker, where we can be able to apply this maternity leave. Mr. Speaker, I want to move with those many remarks and say that the laws as it is, Mr. Speaker, we must also look at the adoption process and make it easier. Our Child Welfare Society has done a lot of work in that, Mr. Speaker, in terms of scanning the statistics. But if you go to Sharia House today, it is very difficult to get this data. It is very difficult because it's in mystery. People don't find it conventional. People don't want to talk about adoption. People have stigma against adopted kids. They want to call them bought kids. I know that happens a lot out there, that you are bought. Mr. Speaker, we also must protect the right of the child as per Article 53, Section 2, and that data, Mr. Speaker, must also be available. Mr. Speaker, the issue of trading of children and labor and taking children out of this country has also been raised, especially by the public. I want to confirm that our laws are very stringent. You can even be placed with a child 6 months and you cannot travel with that child outside the country, because you must show from the court that you have actually been given the right, you have processed the birth certificate that includes your name. It is a whole process, Mr. Speaker. So I want to confirm that the fears that have been raised have been addressed, and I hope that members can look at this issue, Mr. Speaker. And I know the committee also raised the issue of surrogacy, so that we combine it with this bill, that if you are the commissioning parent, as they are called, the owner of the child, so to say, in the rented womb, you also have some rights to bond with your child, and that, Mr. Speaker, will come during the committee stage. But with those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I hope that many members will be able to follow this and save so many people, so many children out there who are languishing in children's homes, and yet they could be going home somewhere warm, somewhere they can be taken care of, and somewhere they can be appreciated, and we will reduce the stigma that is associated with adoption, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move, and I ask Honorable Dan Manzo to second. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Manzo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second this bill and say that it is very important. One, it's going to synchronize laws related to children, including the Constitution. And two, the rights of children are supreme. Three, Mr. Speaker, when a new parent or a parent adopts new children, and most of them are in homes, and they are pretty young, Mr. Speaker, they do not have that particular right as the parents who've gotten children normally. And when these new children go to this particular parent or couple, Mr. Speaker, they don't have the time to relate with them, to associate with them, to bond with them. And this is the reason why this bill is important, and I'm seconding it, so that we also equalize, we give equal rights also to these parents, so that they could also get a leave which is within law, by the time they have that particular leave, they are able to bond with these children. In a lot of scenarios, and we have a lot of abandoned children, Mr. Speaker, when children are in that scenario, they need love, they need to be taken care of, they need to have parents, and that relationship of adopted children with the adopter should be, it should be, they are real children of those particular parents. Nowadays, Mr. Speaker, there are very many people adopting children. A lot of them are unable to have children normally, and therefore they want to extend their love to others who may not have an opportunity like them. And Mr. Speaker, as as a law is now, Mr. Speaker, some rights have been denied to these particular children be adopted and to the particular parents, Mr. Speaker. And for that matter, the Honorable Wangari has synchronized that so that that gap which is there in law, Mr. Speaker, and is the duty of this House, we could now cover it up and we'll make sure that the rights of parents, the rights of children, labor laws, the Constitution, children laws are all synchronized so that, Mr. Speaker, we do not leave a gap for anyone and we do not leave the laws having loose ends. And I believe it's a great service to this nation and especially to homeless children, most of them abandoned by young mothers, most of them are likely to live without love, most of them are having been aborted, thrown into pit latrines. These are the sort of children picked, and then with the stringent regime of law of adoption, we have made sure as a parliament that there are no loose ends, and this was the only thing probably left, which we now want to tie up as part of our responsibility as parliament. And it is also a way of extending our love, Mr. Speaker, to these children who God has given Kenya and has given our people. So, Mr. Speaker, I beg to second. I thank you.
Honorable Manzo, I was almost telling you that we will have to finish in the next time this is sorted, but you quickly concluded, which is fine. Honorable members, order members, I will propose a question. Honorable members, I will propose a question that the Employment Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 15 of 2019 be read a second time. Honorable members, I saw you stood because it's one, but before we conclude, allow me to recognize a school, Elite Heritage, from Kasarani constituency, Nairobi County. The debate on that having been seconded, will proceed the next time this is sorted in the order paper by the House Business Committee. Honorable members, the time being 1 minute after 1 p.m., this House started adjourned till today, Wednesday, 7th August 2019 at 2:30 p.m.